Step toward the eaves, traveller, as I've just this moment hung the evening lantern to guide the way through this downpour. One way to look at a night like this is to see the rain not as a cold intrusion, but as a necessary curtain, drawing itself closed around our little corner of the world to ensure we aren't disturbed. You look as though you've walked the full length of the winding lane, and I'm glad you found the shop before the mist truly settles into the valley. The stones underfoot are treacherous when they're polished with this much autumn weather, reflecting the amber glow of the windows in a way that makes the whole street look as though it's paved in liquid bronze. It's helpful to consider the contrast of it all. The heavy, mossy slate of the roofs and the dark timber frames standing firm, while the wind tries its best to rattle the leaded glass. There is a certain quiet strength in these old walls, weathered as they are, holding back the damp and keeping the light safe and concentrated inside. It feels right, doesn't it, to find a small, bright anchor like this when the sky turns that particular shade of bruised purple. I've always found that the shop looks its best just as the sun disappears and the chimney smoke begins to hug the rooftops. If you look up at the sign swinging there, the one with the carved book, you can see how the rain has darkened the wood over the years, giving it a character that no new paint could ever replicate. It's been a long day for the world out there, I suspect, and I can see the exhaustion in the way the puddles ripple with every heavy drop. We needn't rush. The night is young, and the shop is well insulated against the elements. I was just checking the seal on the heavy oak door to make sure no drafts were creeping in, and I think we've caught the evening at its most tranquil point. There's something deeply restorative about standing here for a moment, under the shelter of the overhang, listening to the rhythmic drumming on the slate above. It's a cognitive anchor of sorts, a reminder that while the weather may be restless, we have a place of stillness waiting just a few inches away. I've often thought that the smell of wet stone and dying summer leaves is the perfect prelude to the scent of old paper and cedar that waits inside. It prepares the senses, clearing away the noise of the journey so that you can truly appreciate the hush of the shelves. You can see the ferns in their pots by the step are quite enjoying the drink. But I think you and I are much better suited for the hearth side of the glass. I've kept the lamps low tonight, just enough to see the spines of the new arrivals, and the fire has finally settled into that deep, glowing orange that speaks of a long, uninterrupted evening. We'll leave the street to the rain and the shadows, letting the town settle into its own quiet sleep, while we attend to the small, comforting tasks of the shop. There is no urgency here, no demands on your time or your attention other than what you choose to give to the pages. It's a shared physical presence we're creating, a small lit world holding steady against the rain, and I'm genuinely pleased you've decided to join me for the closing watch. Let's not keep the warmth waiting any longer. The latch is heavy, but it gives way with a very satisfying click when you know just how to lean into it. The heavy oak door swings shut behind you, cutting off the sharp bite of the wind and replacing it with the dry, comforting scent of cedar and old parchment. You can set your wet coat right there on the peg. The stone floor here by the entrance is used to a bit of autumn weather, and the heat from the hearth will have it dry before the hour is out. It's quite a change, isn't it? Moving from the vast, damp dark of the lane into this little warren of ours. The ground floor always feels more like a living thing on nights like this, with the timber frames groaning softly as they settle against the chill, and the stained glass lamps casting their fractured, jewel-toned patterns across the spines of 1,000 different worlds. I was just about to do a final sweep of the main room, but the dust can wait a while longer while we get you properly settled into the rhythm of the shop. Can you feel that low thrum of warmth radiating from the stone fireplace? It's the heart of this place, really, keeping the damp from the valley at bay so the pages stay crisp and the ink stays clear. I've often thought that books breathe in their own quiet way, and they're much happier when there's a steady fire crackling nearby. If you look around, you'll see we've grown a bit crowded since your last visit. The shelves are practically bursting, and I've had to start stacking some of the sturdier histories directly on the floorboards. It makes the aisles a bit narrower, I suppose, but it adds a layer of insulation that no tapestry could match. There's a specific kind of hush that lives in a room filled with books after the sun goes down. A sort of expectant silence, as if every volume is just waiting for a candle to be brought near so it can share its secrets. I've left the lamps on the side tables lit specifically so you can see the way the light catches the gold leaf on some of those older bindings. It's a bit of a maze in here, I know, but there's a logic to the clutter if you look closely enough. The herbalism texts are all clustered near the window where the moonlight hits them, and the seafaring journals are tucked away in the back where the shadows are deep and blue. I find it helps to keep the different temperaments of the stories in their own corners. Even the air feels different as you move through the shop. Warmer by the hearth, where the air is thick with the scent of beeswax and dry wood, and a little sharper near the leaded glass, where the rain is still tapping out its frantic, rhythmic code. It's a wonderful sound when you know you don't have to go back out into it, like a frantic knock at a door you have no intention of opening. Take a moment to let the stillness of the room really sink in. There's no rush to do anything at all. The town is shuttered. The lanterns in the square are likely flickering out, and we are quite alone with the thoughts of 100 different authors. I've always found that the overstimulated escapist, as a friend of mine once called them, finds a peculiar kind of peace in the sheer density of a shop like this. There is so much to see, yet nothing demands your immediate attention. You can let your eyes wander from the colourful glass shades of the lamps to the stacks of loose parchment on my desk, and eventually the buzzing of the outside world just fades. It's a cognitive anchor, a way to tell your mind that the work of the day is finished and the custodial tasks of the evening are all that remain. I'm just going to move this stack of ledger papers so we have a bit more room to breathe. And then we can see about that crate that arrived just before the heavens opened. The latch is heavy, but it gives way with a very satisfying click when you know just how to lean into it, revealing the treasures nestled within this iron-bound wooden chest. There is a specific sharp scent that rises when a crate like this is first opened. A mixture of fresh ink, sun-dried linen paper, and the faint, lingering salt of the journey it took to get here. It's a bit like opening a window into another province, isn't it? I've been looking forward to this shipment all week, and having you here to help me sort through them makes the task feel less like a chore and more like a shared discovery. See how the candlelight dances across the open page of this celestial atlas? The ink is still so dark and crisp, mapping out stars that I'm sure are currently hidden behind those thick autumn clouds outside. We'll just set the magnifying glass here for a moment. I want to ensure the binding on this green volume is as sturdy as the merchant promised, before we find it a permanent home on the shelves. It's a slow process, checking each spine and smoothing down any stray corners of parchment. But it's the kind of work that grounds a person. Can you see the fine, hand-drawn diagrams in this astronomy text? It reminds me of a traveller who passed through these parts a few winters ago. A quiet fellow who spent 3 days straight in that corner nook, comparing his own hand-drawn charts to everything we had in stock. He never said much, but the way he handled the books told me he saw them as more than just objects. They were his maps to the infinite. I like to think he's out there somewhere tonight, perhaps under a clearer sky than ours, putting this knowledge to good use. It's a curious thing being a keeper of books. You realize very quickly that you never truly own them. You're just a temporary guardian, a custodian making sure they stay dry and cared for until the right person comes along to carry them off into their own story. I'll place this smaller, red-bound journal on the top of the stack for now. It feels quite different from the others. Softer leather, perhaps goatskin, and filled with the sort of heavy, cream-coloured paper that practically begs for a fountain pen. There's something about a blank book in a shop like this that feels like an unstarted fire. It's full of potential warmth, just waiting for the right spark of an idea to bring it to life. If you want to lean in closer, you can see the way the wax from the candle has pooled slightly in the holder. It's a good marker of how much of the evening we've already enjoyed. The rain hasn't let up one bit, has it? In fact, I think it's grown a little more insistent, drumming against the leaded panes of the window there, making this sorting table feel like a very small, very safe island in a very large, very wet sea. We're in no hurry to finish, of course. I find that if you rush through a crate like this, you miss the small details. The way a certain page feels under your thumb, or the faint smell of lavender that someone tucked into the packing straw to keep the moths away. I've put a few of those dried sprigs into this ceramic bowl on the desk. The scent helps to cut through the heaviness of the damp air outside. It's these little sensory layers that make a shop feel like a home, don't you think? A bit of beeswax on the wood, a bit of herb in the air, and the steady, rhythmic sound of the weather doing its worst while we do our best to stay comfortable. I think we've made a good dent in the top layer. I'll just lift this heavy atlas out of the way so we can see what's hidden underneath. And then we might begin the walk toward the deeper aisles to see where these new friends might best fit. Lifting this heavy atlas with 2 hands reveals a stack of smaller field guides that feel just right for the lower shelves near the herbals. We'll carry these along as we weave our way deeper into the stacks, where the air is a few degrees warmer and the sound of the rain becomes a dull, rhythmic thrumming against the thick stone walls. Can you feel the difference in the floorboards as we move? Out by the door, they were tight and silent, but back here, near the ladder rails, they have a bit of a conversational creak to them, as if they're acknowledging each step we take. It's a narrow path through here, I know, but there's a certain comfort in being hemmed in by so much history. Each one of these tall, timber-framed units is packed with volumes that have travelled much further than you or I likely ever will. and they seem to stand a little taller when the house is quiet and the lamps are low. If you look up to the highest reaches where the rolling ladder rests, you can see how the shadows play across the dark wood carvings of the cornices. I've often thought that the books at the very top are the most patient. They know they're only reached for on special occasions, so they spend their years in a state of quiet meditation, watching the dust motes dance in the lantern light. I'll just slide this field guide into the gap right here. See how it fits? It's as if the shelf was exhaling, finally feeling complete again. You're welcome to run your hand along the spines as we walk. There is a tactile language to old leather and buckram that tells you as much about a book's character as the title on the front. Some are smooth and cool like river stones, while others have a rough, honest texture that speaks of long days spent in a satchel under a hot sun. I've always loved this particular turn in the aisle because it opens up just enough to reveal the big reading chair and the patchwork quilt I keep draped over the arm. It's a bit of a sanctuary within a sanctuary, tucked away from the windows so the drafts can't find you. I've spent many a late night right there, with the fire crackling in the stone hearth and a single candle for company, feeling as though the rest of the town had simply drifted away into the mist. It's a physical anchor, a place where the weight of the day's tasks can finally be set down. Can you see the way the light from that hanging lantern catches the jars of ink and the spare nibs on the upper shelf? I like to keep the tools of the trade close at hand, even if the only writing I do these days is a few lines in the ledger before I blow out the lamps. There is a restorative power in these narrow aisles that I don't think you can find anywhere else. When you're surrounded by this much concentrated thought, your own worries tend to shrink down to a manageable size. They become just another story in a shop full of them, something to be filed away and reflected upon when the timing is right. I'll just adjust the position of the ladder so it doesn't block the path to the stairs, and then we can take this last handful of arrivals over toward the desk. The air back here is getting a bit heavy with the scent of dry wood and old ink, and I find myself thinking more and more about that kettle we left by the fireplace. I believe I have a tin of that smoky black tea that fits an autumn night perfectly, and it's high time we saw about getting it into a pot. The hammered surface of this old kettle catches the light with a soft, dappled glow, as the water inside finally begins its steady, rising hum. It's a sound that marks the true beginning of the night's rest, isn't it? The transition from the work of sorting and shelving to the simple, slow ritual of making tea. I've laid out everything we'll need here on the counter, right where the warmth of the small burner can keep the damp at bay. There is something deeply satisfying about the weight of this ceramic tea jar in the hand. It's thick-walled and sturdy, keeping the leaves fresh and dry even when the autumn air is as heavy as it is tonight. Go ahead and take a breath of that. It's a blend of black leaves from the southern estates, mixed with just a pinch of dried heather and a hint of something smoky that reminds me of a distant campfire. It's a robust brew, the kind that stands up well to a cold rain and a long book. I like to use this wooden dipper for the honey. See how the golden liquid spirals down into the dish. It's slow, patient, and completely unconcerned with the rush of the world outside. I find that watching it helps to settle the mind, much like watching the steam rise from the spout of the kettle. If you look closely at the window behind the tea station, you can see the individual droplets of rain racing each other down the glass, illuminated by the glow of the stained glass lamp. It creates a sense of being perfectly insulated, a small pocket of warmth and domestic intent held within the larger, darker world. We'll just sprinkle a few more of these dried herbs onto the tray. They add a faint, floral top note that balances the earthiness of the tea. It's these small, sensory choices that make a simple cup of water feel like a celebration of the evening. There's no need to rush the steeping process. A good tea, like a good story, requires a bit of time to reveal its true depth. While we wait for the leaves to unfurl, I find myself thinking about the old potter who made this jar. He lived on the edge of the wetlands, a man who spent his days with his hands in the clay and his eyes on the horizon. He used to say that you could tell the quality of a person's life by the way they prepared their tea, whether they treated it as a hurdle to be cleared or a moment to be inhabited. I think he'd be pleased to see his work being used like this, as part of a quiet watch in a shop full of books. Can you feel the heat radiating from the burner? It's a concentrated, cheerful kind of warmth that makes the shadows in the aisles feel less like voids and more like soft, velvet curtains. I've always found that the kitchen or the tea station is the soul of any building, even a bookshop. It's where the physical needs are met, allowing the mind to finally drift off into the more abstract world of the shelves. Once the tea is ready, the whole atmosphere of the shop will change. It will become a place of deep, quiet contemplation rather than a place of tasks. I'll just adjust the flame slightly so it doesn't boil over, and then we can let the pot sit for a few minutes while the scent fills the air. It's a fragrance that speaks of comfort, of safety, and of the shared stillness we've built here tonight. I'll fetch the heavy mugs from the hook, the ones with the thick handles that keep your fingers warm, and then I think it might be time to see what's waiting for us on the upper floor, where the older volumes keep their watch. The heavy ceramic mugs are warm against our palms as we make the slow, careful climb up the creaking wooden stairs to where the older volumes keep their watch. You can feel the air change as we ascend. It's thinner here and noticeably drier, held in place by the massive oak beams that form the skeleton of this roof. Up here, the sound of the rain is no longer a distant thrum, but a lively, immediate percussion right above our heads. It's a rhythmic, comforting noise that seems to press the rest of the world away, leaving just this small, attic sanctuary for us to explore. I've always felt that the books on this level have a different sort of gravity to them. They are the survivors of the shop, the ones that have seen generations of keepers and travelers come and go. If you look at the way the lantern light catches the window seat there, you can see how the shadows of the rooftops outside dance against the glass, making the whole room feel like it's floating in the autumn mist. I'll set the tea down on the edge of the desk for a moment, so we can adjust that quill and inkwell. I don't want any accidents near these rare maps. Can you see the way the parchment of that large atlas is curled at the edges? It's a map of the old trade routes, hand-inked by someone who clearly spent more time on the sea than on land. There's a certain intimacy to this floor, with its lower ceilings and the stacks of books that reach all the way into the eaves. It feels less like a shop and more like a private study, doesn't it? I find that my voice naturally drops an octave when I'm up here, out of respect for the sheer age of the thoughts bound in all this leather and linen. Even the small wood-burning stove in the corner seems to whisper rather than crackle, puffing out a gentle heat that smells of seasoned birch and long-forgotten summers. Take a look at that window seat. It's the perfect place to watch the town go to sleep. From this height, you can see the wet slate of the neighboring roofs and the way the chimney smoke gets whipped away by the wind before it can even reach the tops of the trees. It's a reminder of just how sturdy this little anchor of ours really is. We're tucked right into the brow of the building here, safe and dry, while the storm does its best to rattle the casements. I've often sat there with a bowl of soup on winter evenings, just watching the stars when the sky is clear enough to show them. Tonight, though, the clouds are too thick for stargazing, which only makes the interior of the shop feel more focused and precious. Everything we need is right here within these four walls. Warmth, companionship, and 1,000 lives waiting to be read. I'll just move that stack of ledgers to make sure the rug is lying flat. I'd hate for either of us to trip in the dim light. There is a sense of completion up here, a feeling that we've reached the quietest part of the evening. The tasks of the day are all but finished. The shop is secure, and the tea is exactly the right temperature to drink. I find that the overstimulated mind finally starts to let go of its buzzing when it's surrounded by this much stillness. You can almost feel the house exhaling, settling down for the long night ahead. I've noticed that the candle on the desk is getting a bit low, but we have plenty more downstairs where the real comfort is waiting. I think it's time we headed back down to the main floor, toward the big chair by the hearth, where I've picked out something special for you to see. Descending the last few steps brings us right back to the heart of the ground floor, where the air is thickest with the scent of wood smoke and the promise of a long, undisturbed sit. This corner has always been my favorite part of the shop, particularly when the weather outside is as relentless as it is tonight. I've gone ahead and set that book I mentioned right on the cushion of the armchair. It's a sturdy old thing, isn't it? The leather of the chair has softened over decades, molded by countless readers who have sought refuge here, and it has a way of holding you that makes the rest of the world feel very far away indeed. You can see the way the lamplight hits the open page, illuminating the ink and the hand-drawn illustrations of herbs and wildwood flowers. It's a gentle sort of light, designed to keep the eyes from tiring even after a few hours of steady reading. There's something about a tufted chair and a low-burning candle that invites a person to finally let their shoulders drop. Can you feel the heat from the hearth reaching across the rug to find your toes? It's a physical weight of warmth, a counterpoint to the cold, blue shadows pressing against the leaded panes of the window just to our left. I've placed your tea right there on the side table, next to the small kettle. It's still steaming, sending up those little ribbons of vapor that catch the amber light. If you look out at the street for just a moment, you'll see the cobbles are completely slick now, reflecting the golden glow of our shop like a mirror. It makes our little nook feel like a dry island, a solitary point of light in a town that has fully surrendered to the autumn rain. I find that the overstimulated escapist usually needs a minute or two of just staring into the fire or at the pattern of the rug before they can truly sink into a book. It's a transition period, a slow shedding of all those buzzing thoughts about what needs to be done tomorrow or what went wrong yesterday. Here, in this chair, the only thing that matters is the sentence in front of you. I've always loved the texture of the paper in this specific volume. It has a slight tooth to it, a weight that feels substantial and honest. There are no flashing lights here, no urgent notifications, just the steady, rhythmic drumming of the rain and the occasional soft pop of a log settling in the grate. It's a cognitive anchor, a place where the mind is finally given permission to stop scanning for threats and simply be. I'll just adjust the candle on this small wooden stool so it's not flickering quite so much in the draft. There's no rush to turn the first page. We have the whole night ahead of us, and the shop is locked tight against the wind. I often think that the best way to read is to treat it like a conversation with an old friend. You don't rush the beginning, you let the silence settle between you first. I'm going to settle into my own spot just across the way, but I'll be right here if the tea needs topping up or if the fire needs another log. The sound of the rain is deepening, isn't it? It has that heavy midnight quality to it now, the kind of sound that makes the blankets feel thicker and the lamplight feel brighter. I'll just leave you with the opening chapter for a moment while I fetch my own reading glasses from the counter. The bridge of these spectacles is cold for only a second before the world of the page snaps into perfect, sharp focus. Settling into the chair opposite you feels like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place, the structural weight of the day finally finding its rest. Can you feel how the cushions seem to rise up to meet you, absorbing the last of that lingering tension from the rainy walk? We are quite cocooned here now, with the stone chimney breast radiating a steady, deep heat, and the tea in our cups letting off its final, lazy plumes of steam. If you look past the glow of our little circle, you can see the aisles stretching back into the shadows, the thousands of books standing like silent sentinels over our peace. They've been tended to. The new arrivals are safe in their places, and there is absolutely nothing left to be done but to enjoy the company of the rain. It's a peculiar and wonderful thing, the way a room can feel so much larger and more significant when the light is concentrated in just one or two spots. The corners of the shop have drifted away into a soft, velvety dark, leaving us in this amber-hued bubble where the only clock that matters is the slow burn of the log in the grate. I've always found that the sound of water against glass is the finest lullaby ever composed. It's a constant, shifting melody that tells the brain the world is being washed clean while we stay tucked away in the dry. You don't need to focus on my words anymore if you don't wish to. The story in your hands, or the heat from the hearth, is enough of a companion now. We have reached that part of the evening where the silence between us is just as comfortable as the conversation was. A shared acknowledgement that the sanctuary is holding steady. Look at the way the firelight catches the gold lettering on the spines nearby. It's a slow, rhythmic pulsing, almost like the shop itself is breathing in time with the storm. I'll be staying right here, turning my own pages from time to time, but I suspect I'll be watching the flames more than the ink. There is a deep, quiet contentment in a job well ended and a night well started. You have my full permission to let your eyes get heavy, to let the book rest on your lap, or to simply watch the way the rain streaks distort the lantern light on the cobbles outside. The town is asleep, the shop is quiet, and the fire is as high as it needs to be for the next few hours. We are the only two awake in this little corner of the world, and it is a very good place to be. The hearth is low and glowing, the tea is warm, and the rain is a steady promise of solitude. I'll keep the watch for a while longer. To draft, you are free to drift. There's a certain magic in the moment when the narrative of the day finally dissolves into the pure sensory experience of the night. The smell of cedar, the warmth of the quilt, and the distant, muffled heartbeat of the autumn rain. Rest well, traveller, for the shop is a safe harbour tonight, and it will be here, just as quiet and just as welcoming, whenever the sun decides to return. For now, there is only the rain, the light, and the deep, hushed peace of the shelves. Everything is exactly as it should be.